Hi, everyone. My name is Dana Williams, and I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications for Feeding San Diego. And on behalf of our entire team, I would like to sincerely welcome you to today's Unite Stakeholder Call. Throughout the call today, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to type them into the chat feature. And in the last 15 minutes of our call, we will happily take all of your questions. As many of you know, Feeding San Diego launched this Unite Stakeholder Call series back in March as an opportunity to keep the community informed about our COVID response efforts, and also to allow people facing hunger in the community to be aware of new food distributions that we were hosting and to be able to share opportunities for people to get involved and to support our work. We will return to that regular format in January, but we wanted to do something special for today's call. And Afdhel, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. So today, this week actually, marks the kickoff to a very special holiday campaign called Give Hope, Share Joy. And yet this campaign is happening at a time when the world really does feel upside down. We are in the midst of a global pandemic, and more people are facing hunger today than ever before. And sadly, many for the very first time. The last 9 months have been intense and the road ahead is long. And yet everyone on the call today is faced with a common purpose, the purpose to end hunger across San Diego County. So today's call is an opportunity to remind everyone about the power of purpose and the fact that together we can do extraordinary things. I am honored to be able to introduce to you today our keynote speaker, Afdhel Aziz, who is one of the world's thought leaders on the power of purpose and business as a force for good. Afdhel has written an amazing book. He co-authored, I should say, an amazing best-selling book called Good is the New Cool, Market Like You Give a Damn. He is also the founder and chief purpose officer at the Conspiracy of Love, which is a think tank and idea incubator that helps Fortune 500 companies like Adidas, Red Bull, Microsoft, and Facebook use culture and technology as a force for good. Afdhel's work has been featured in the New York Times, in Vice, in Fast Company, Fortune, Forbes, The Guardian, Billboard, Mashable, and many more. He has worked with world-class artists such as Lady Gaga and has spoken at a number of renowned events, including Cannes Lions, South by Southwest, TEDx, Advertising Week, and the Forbes CMO Summit. I had the pleasure of actually attending one of Afdhel's conferences last year called Good is the New Cool in LA at the Tom Shoe headquarters. And it was such a powerful experience. And I'm proud to say it actually helped lead me to Feeding San Diego. Afdhel, thank you so much for being with us today. And we are so excited to have you.
Thank you so much, Dana, for that really warm welcome. Yeah, welcome everybody. Thanks for having me here today. I'm excited to talk to you guys a little bit about this idea of purpose. What is it and how can you harness it as a force for good in the world? But before I dive in, I wanted to tell you a little bit of a personal story about myself and my own journey to purpose and how I got here. I was born in Sri Lanka, which is a beautiful little tropical island off the south coast of Sri Lanka. Some of you may have been there. I hope you know it. It's kind of like Hawaii, if you imagine a South Asian version of Hawaii. And I left there when I was 17 to study and move to London. But I kept going back every year to visit my family. And I was back there 1 year for my brother's wedding. You know, when your little brother gets married, that's really a cause for joy and celebration. Unfortunately, he happened to be getting married in December of 2004, which, if you remember, was the month that the Asian tsunami hit the country and hit the whole of the Indian Ocean countries as well. I woke up unharmed and safe in Colombo, the capital city, but I woke up in a country where 30,000 of my fellow countrymen had died in one day, and it really shook me to my core. I did the best I could in the weeks and months that followed with relief operations and helping feed people in refugee camps, but I had to go back to work in London after a certain amount of time, and when I got back there, something had changed inside of me. I worked in marketing. I worked in very glamorous jobs, but something seemed hollow about it. I realized that something had changed where I felt like the work that I didn't matter, that it wasn't meaningful enough to be able to be of service to the world. And I realize now that that was really the beginning of my journey to service, to purpose, to think about how I could take this craft of marketing, of being in business, and turn it into something that could be a force for good as well. Um, that really led me to many years later partnering with my good friend and partner in purpose, as I call him, Bobby Jones, to write the book that Dana referenced, Good is the New Cool, Market Like You Give a Damn, to give it its full title. We also stage the Good is the New Cool conferences every year. And in fact, we were just chatting about this. We're bringing it back virtually on December the 3rd. If you go to goodistheNewCool.com, you can see we have an incredible lineup of change makers coming and inspiring us with innovating for good. It also led to me writing for Forbes, and I write this column, which gives me an excellent opportunity to go and learn from the best in the world about how purpose is shaping the world. I hope you'll check out the column. Incidentally, if you'd like this entire presentation, please just connect with me on LinkedIn and I'll send it to you so you don't have to take notes and take screenshots and things like that as well throughout. The work I do has also led me to found Conspiracy of Love, which is a purpose consultancy. All we do is help companies like the ones you see on the screen either discover what their purpose is or find ways to manifest that in ways that help society and the environment. You'll notice Feeding America is on there as a client. I was privileged enough to work with the wonderful Kathy Davis, the Chief Marketing Officer of the Feeding America National Organization, on some work with Ritz crackers, which I'm going to share with you as some inspiration as well. But I want you to think about all these logos on screen. Don't think about them as companies. Think about the men and women inside these companies who are really dedicating their lives to figuring out a way how they can use the enormous power of business to be a force for good. And I'm going to talk a little bit today about what we've learned in advising these companies and how you can apply them as well. So I want to start by talking about the world before COVID-19, because if you looked at the headlines, it didn't seem like the world was going really well. We had the biggest income inequality on the planet, a staggering amount of people below the poverty line and not finding a way to win their way up the ladder to really live that American dream. We saw the rise of hate, the rise of neo-Nazi groups all around the world, including right here in the United States. And we're seeing things like the climate crisis reach a peak with brave leaders like Greta Thunberg here, finding ways to stand up and warn us about the imminent catastrophe that we had. So if you're reading all these headlines, you think, man, the world was in a pretty bad place. But here were some other headlines that I was starting to see. I was seeing things like Tesla becoming the world's largest car manufacturer on the planet. Tesla currently is valued at $203 billion, which is more than General Motors or Ford or Toyota. Think about it. This is a pure electric car company becoming the most valuable car company on the planet. It's signaling that consumers are ready to start changing their old habits and find new ways to combat the climate crisis. We're seeing companies like Microsoft decide to not only become carbon neutral, but reverse all of the emissions they had ever put onto the world. We're seeing Delta and JetBlue pledging billions of dollars to become the world's first carbon neutral airlines. IKEA is an incredible company that we've studied. They're taking a cradle to cradle approach to create a circular economy model where they're responsible for everything they ever make, not throwing into landfills, but finding ways to regenerate them forever. Even McDonald's may not seem like the most forward-thinking company on the planet, but when it decided to only buy cage-free eggs, it changed the dynamics of animal welfare. McDonald's buys 2 billion eggs a year. And when it decided to only go cage-free, it has a huge ripple effect around the world as well. One of my favorite examples is the plant-based Whopper burger from Burger King. We know that consumption of meat products is one of the biggest contributors to climate change. And so the arrival of a $3, pretty delicious, by the way, purely plant-based burger is kind of incredible. I don't know if you saw the news this week. McDonald's also announced they were launching McPlant. So there's something really interesting going on here. Starbucks deciding to provide free college education to anyone who worked for them and give them a leg up in life. But then COVID hit, and then we started to see headlines like this: unemployment soaring, and food banks like the amazing ones that Feeding San Diego run suddenly crushed by the huge amount of demand. I believe the statistics is that in any given year, there's usually around 37 million people who are food insecure. I believe right now that number is in the 57 to 60 million people who are suffering at the moment. And then, of course, what they call the second silent pandemic of mental health sweeping the country as people grapple with anxiety and depression as well. What we started to also see with the headlines this summer as we face the long overdue racial justice reckoning with the tragic death of George Floyd, and this understanding that there is systemic racism in this country and we need to do something about it as well. This is when you started to see brands and companies step into this mix and try to do something, whether it was companies repurposing their supply chains to create ventilators or PPE, brands stepping into the fray and speaking out against things like systemic racism. Ben & Jerry's, for example, this incredible tweet about dismantling white supremacy. By the way, Ben & Jerry's has launched a 6-part podcast on dismantling white supremacy. I want you to just think about this for a second. This is an ice cream brand talking about dismantling white supremacy. So something is going on where companies realize that they need to step up. And the data is there to prove this as well. This is the Edelman Trust Barometer. Some staggering numbers. 65% of consumers say that a brand's response in the crisis will have a huge impact on their likelihood of purchasing them in the future. Brands can build a new level of connection with consumers or risk losing their relationship forever. I love this stat. 62% of consumers said that they did not think they would make it through the crisis without the brands in their country playing a role in the fight against coronavirus. So the writing is on the wall. There are new expectations of brands to help. None of this was new to us, though, because we've been studying this for a while. And what we realized was that for business, purpose is going to become the next digital in terms of how transformative it is, in terms of how you run your business, because of these 3 reasons. Companies today are faced with 3 tectonic shifts, all happening at the same time. One is the shift of consumers who want to buy products and services from companies that do good in the world. 2 is the shift of employees who then want to work for those companies. And 3 is the shift of investors, shareholders, and Wall Street who now want to invest money in them. So let's go through each of these one by one really quickly. Number 1 is the rise of the conscious consumer. I've been a marketer for 20 years. I've never seen numbers like this. By pretty much every single metric, consumers are more likely to try products and services from companies that do good, more likely to advocate on their behalf and tell other people about it, and more likely to pay more money for products and services which they believe are sustainable or made ethically as well. You're seeing this translate into growth. This is the Kantar Purpose 2020 study, an amazing study about this. I highly encourage you to check it out. The companies that are really committed to purpose are the ones that are outperforming those by almost 200%. When you look at millennials alone as one of the single largest cohorts, you see this really clearly indicated. I love these 2 statistics side by side. Millennials have an annual spending power of 2.5 trillion, and 95% of them say they would switch brands to one that supported a good cause in an authentic, meaningful manner. It's summed up in this great quote. For these guys, every time you spend money, you're casting a vote for the kind of world you want to live in. Secondly, let's look at employees. We talk about purpose and...
Sorry to interrupt, we lost your slides.
Oh, I'm sorry. What happened? Hold on a second. Let's try that again. Can you see them now? All right, let's try that again. Can you guys see that okay now, Dana?
Yeah, we're good. Thank you.
Sorry about that, guys. So let's talk about employees next. We talk about how purpose and a paycheck is the new normal. With the arrival of millennial and Gen Z employees into the workforce, there are new expectations of jobs. 64% of millennials won't take a job if an employer doesn't have a strong CSR practice. 85% of Gen Z employees believe companies have an obligation to help social problems. So we say, if you want to future-proof your organization for the next 2 generations of talent, you need to show people how they work, ladders up to something more meaningful than just a quarterly profit goal as well. We're also seeing the rise of what we call employee activism. Workers in some of these companies like Google, Amazon, Wayfair, most recently Facebook, standing up and saying, we disagree with our management. We believe that we need to act in a more principled, moral, ethical way. This is not going anywhere anytime soon. So a modern day CEO now has a new constituency of people inside their company who are holding them accountable as well. And finally, investors. This rather stern-looking gentleman on the right is Larry Fink. He is the chairman and CEO of BlackRock, the single largest institutional investor on the planet. And every year for the last 3 years, he has driven home this point that profits are in no way inconsistent with purpose. In fact, profits and purpose are inextricably linked. This may be why the CEOs of 200 leading American companies have come out and said, making money for our shareholders alone is no longer our primary objective. We are now responsible to a broad range of stakeholders. Yes, our employees, our consumers, our shareholders, but our communities and the planet as well. Again, the data is there to show a correlation between the most ethical and stakeholder-focused companies and the returns on the S&P 500. This is a wonderful analysis from the Tory project. Over the last 20 years, the yellow line is the most stakeholder-focused companies, while the red is the S&P 500. The yellow line has outperformed the bottom by 100%. So there is no longer the myth that you can't do good and do well by your shareholders at the same time as being well and truly exploded. By the way, I put all of this stuff together in a Forbes article. In case you're looking for all the data, it's called All the Data You Were Looking For, and it's right there if you want to Google it. It's here at this link as well. All of this is why we truly believe that purpose is the new digital for companies. It is going to be as transformative as the arrival of digital it was, and you have a choice. Either you embrace it, like the enormous competitive advantage it is, or watch others embrace it and go ahead without you. So let's talk about the how. How do companies build purpose into their organizations? This is the subject of the next book that we're writing called The Principles of Purpose. It's available to pre-order now. Sorry for the plug. It's going to come out sometime in January. And in it, we tried to answer the question, if I'm a leader of a company and I want to transform it into a force for good, how do I do it? And this is the set of principles that we boiled it down to. We went out and interviewed companies, people in companies like Tesla, Patagonia, Airbnb, Zappos, and boiled it down to these operational principles. First, purpose must work inside out. You need to make sure you take care of your employees and make sure that there is gender equality, there is diversity and inclusion inside before you go out there and start preaching about the outside world. Two, you have to pick your swords and shields. We're going to talk about this. The sword is the crusade in the world that you decide your company wants to take on. For example, helping to end hunger in the United States. Number three, purpose must be profitable to be sustainable. This is business, not philanthropy. There needs to be an ROI to show you how doing good can help do well. But, and here is a really tricky thing, sometimes purpose will cost you money. Sometimes companies need to stand up for their principles and risk losing their consumers, like we saw with Nike and Colin Kaepernick earlier a few years ago. You have to be prepared to stand by your values and lose some customers. At the same time, we say purpose doesn't need to be political. There are ways in which companies can get involved in doing good. For example, partnering with Feeding San Diego. Hunger is not a partisan issue. Everybody across all parts of the political spectrum want to get involved in solving this. Number six, purpose is about being the helper, not the hero. It's really important that you don't make your company the savior riding in on a white horse to solve the problem. It comes across as egotistical and self-indulgent. Number seven, purpose must be an open source pursuit. We're going to talk about that today. Purpose is really about collaboration. It's about businesses and nonprofits and philanthropy all teaming up together, government as well, to find common solutions in an open source way. Number eight, purpose must measure what matters. You need to make sure as an organization, you're looking at the impact of purpose across multiple parts of it, not just brand recognition or profitability, but also how does it make your employees feel? Does it lead to reduced turnover? And number nine, purpose is a journey, not a destination. Just like that, there's no point where a company is going to say, oh, we're digital enough, we're going to stop innovating. Neither is there a finish line with purpose. There are always ways a company can do more good. So let's talk about some of these one by one. So first of all, purpose is about picking your swords and shields. So as a company, you have a lot of different issues which are shields. Sustainability is pretty much a shield for every single company on the planet. But what we're really obsessed with at Conspiracy of Love is picking the sword, the problem in the world that you say, we're going to go help fix this problem. And I want to talk to you about how we helped Ritz find its sword as well with Feeding America. So Ritz is an incredibly iconic brand with a rich heritage and history, actually dating back to its introduction. I didn't know this until I had the pleasure of working in it. It was formed in the Great Depression when people were looking for a bite of the good life, you know. So that's where the word Ritz, with all its connotations of luxury and high living, came. When we met the brand, it really wanted to create a social purpose territory in line with its idea of making the world a more welcoming place. And what we did was go in there and look at how Ritz was really focused on millennial moms. And when we started to explore the issues that they were most passionate about, we discovered that childhood hunger was actually a really powerful place for them to play in. And so we framed their mission around making the school lunchroom a more welcoming place. This led to a partnership between Feeding America and Ritz, donating 5 million meals. And it came at what couldn't have been a better time, right around when COVID hit, when schools in America were closing, meaning that those food insecure students who relied on schools for their primary meals were in the most need. I believe this money went to things like food pantries, which could set up shop outside schools. So even when school was closed, parents and kids could still pick up that much needed nutrition. I'm going to play you a short video that was created by the advertising agency to summarize this partnership as well. So just a really simple TV commercial to show you how the partnership worked. Excuse me, not sure what happened there. But a really nice idea of how now Ritz has a sword. It has a focus for the next 5 years to help make the school lunchroom a more welcoming place. And from all accounts, I hear that the partnership with Feeding America is going really well as well. Another brand I want to talk about is Teeks, a fashion brand that some of you may know. I want to talk about this idea of being the helper, not the hero as well. Teeks, for those of you who don't know, did an incredible job around making face masks for frontline workers when COVID hit. I had the pleasure of interviewing the CEO of Teeks for this Forbes article, which you can find online. By the way, I didn't know what Teeks was. My wife had to explain this to me. They make ballet flats, foldable ballet flats that fit inside your bag. Apparently, this is a huge deal in the footwear community. And when COVID hit, at first they did what every brand does, which was to donate money to hospitals in their local community here in Los Angeles to help them with PPE. But then they realized there was a much bigger role that they could play by being the helper and making the hero their community. What they asked their community to do was something really simple. They asked them to sew face masks for people in need in return for a $25 gift card. Here's how they announced it. So they launched this campaign called #SewTogether, and at first things started to trickle in. A few face masks here and there. I believe they said, if you sew 25 face masks, we'll give you a $25 gift card or something like that. But then something quite remarkable happened. this hashtag Sew Together, started to trend on Twitter. More and more people found out about the campaign. And eventually they had thousands and thousands of people sewing face masks across the country. Here is the CEO of Teeks telling us a little bit about this story as well.
We launched Operation Sew Together. We've since pumped out over 300,000 homemade masks. Masks are being sewn around kitchen tables, in converted basements, in living rooms all over the country. This is one of my greatest prides as the CEO of Teeks.
We just want to thank Teeks and the whole Teek family for everything you've done and coming together to really be instrumental in this effort. These materials and masks are not only going to save our lives, but also our patients, and it's really the change that we need right now, and I can't thank you enough.
So the remarkable thing that happened was that people all around the country started sewing face masks and then posting about it on Twitter and on social media, which led to more people sewing face masks and promoting it on social media, until eventually Teeks community sold no less than 1 million masks in the last 3 or 4 months and donated them to hospitals all around the country. And to me, it's a really beautiful example of how we can look at the idea of being the helper, not the hero. Teeks didn't say, we're going to be the ones who save the world with face masks that we make. They asked their community to step up, and boy, did they step up. The last principle I want to talk about is purpose should be an open source pursuit. Purpose is really about collaboration. And the folks who are on this call today, you guys are all an excellent example of how the world can work together and the community of San Diego can work together as well. I want to talk a little bit about the incredible work that Feeding San Diego does here in this community. I've had the pleasure of getting to know the team, and they do remarkable work. Feeding San Diego provides more than 31.2 million meals to people facing hunger, and 92% of it was rescued food. Maybe some of the restaurants that you guys run, some of you guys on the call as well. Here's the bit that I didn't know. In also feeding people, they're also helping to contribute to climate change, to solving climate change, by diverting more than 27.6 million pounds of good food from the landfills. Feeding San Diego has averted 24,578 metric tons, 24,578 metric tons of CO2 equivalent from being emitted into the atmosphere, comparable to taking 5,300 cars off the road. Bravo, guys. I think that is an incredible, incredible result. The mission of Teeks, the purpose of Teeks is, of Feeding San Diego, is to connect every person facing hunger with nutritious meals by maximizing food rescue. And the vision is for a hunger-free and healthy San Diego. I'm going to play you guys a beautiful video about their COVID response.
1 in 6 San Diegans are now facing hunger due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Severe job losses along with school closures are creating a critical need for food assistance among countless children, families, and seniors throughout our community.
I'm Tony Hawk.
Bill Walton.
John Foreman. We are asking all of you to go to feedingsandiego.org and give today. Every dollar you give will impact San Diegans who need it most.
Feeding San Diego needs your support more than ever. Go to feedingsandiego.org and give today.
Thank you for sharing that video, guys. We're going to save some time in the Q&A to talk more about how you can participate. But I just love the mission of what you guys do. And to me, it really speaks to this idea that I want to end with by talking about today. We're in a moment where a lot of people are in a lot of trouble. Those of us on this call are probably the ones who have the luxury of resilience. And I believe that resilience is a responsibility. We need to help save lives, and we need to help save livelihoods as well. I hope today what you're really seeing is the incredible way that businesses and nonprofits and philanthropy can work together to really create purpose as an open source pursuit as well. Some closing thoughts before we get into the Q&A session. Looking forward to your questions. When COVID hit, we were really kind of taken by surprise as a society, and we were in the respond phase, where we needed to serve critical needs and safeguard society. I believe we're now currently in the relief phase, which is about providing fulfillment and connection. But soon we're going to be in the recovery phase, And this is where I believe we can really build it back better than we found it before. Build back better is an idea that has been around in disaster relief for a very long time. When a hurricane hits your city, you shouldn't build back the infrastructure to the level it was before. You should build it back better. And I truly believe that because of COVID and because of the racial justice reckoning, we are at a crossroads as America. I believe that we have a choice to make about how we can get past our divisions, how we can heal, and how we can see each other's common humanity, and together find a way of tackling all of these problems like hunger that are solvable in our lifetime. I really encourage you all to think transformational, not transactional. We're in a moment where Elon Musk is building us rockets to go to Mars. We can think big. And that's why I really want you to think big about the work that you can do. Hopefully you've seen what I believe that purpose is the key to reboot our society. Corporation by corporation, we can find a way for all of us to do better, working in tandem with nonprofits, working in tandem with government as well. It may surprise you to know that corporations have more resources than governments and nonprofit. This is an analysis of revenue by stakeholder by Professor Michael Porter at Harvard. Government has $3.1 trillion, nonprofits 1.2 trillion, corporations 20.1 trillion. The power is in those corporations. And if you're on this call and you work for a corporation or you advise them, the power is with you. You have the ability to influence what they do, to use purpose to help them find ways to do well by doing good. We truly believe we're in this moment where we're moving beyond corporate social responsibility into corporate social opportunity. There are ways to make money and do good at the same time. We just have to be brave enough and innovative enough to do that. And I'm going to leave you with this quote by the incredible Brené Brown, who I adore. We can choose courage or we can choose comfort, but we can't have both. And today, I really ask you to choose courage. Courage as you think about those companies that you lead, courage as you think about the community of San Diego that you're part of, and courage as you think about your own purpose and how you can leave this world slightly better than you found it. This world isn't perfect, but maybe we can make it a little bit better if we all try together. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm looking forward to all of your questions now.
Afdhel, thank you so much. That was amazing and so heartfelt. I could listen to you talk all day. I don't know about everybody else, but that just really was a bit of a shot in the arm that of inspiration that I know I needed to hear. I think at this time, you know, when so much of the world around us seems like, as I said before, upside down, it seems like a lot of things are really out of our control. But I loved, you know, what you said today, because the fact of the matter is, there is a lot of power that we do hold that is within our control, and there are a lot of actions that we can take so that we can each be a part of the solution. And my key takeaways are from what you said is that you know, I will continue to be proud to tie my paycheck to purpose. I think that as citizens, we can all continue to vote with our wallets. As organizations, we can all help choose our swords. And I think, you know, during this holiday season, we can all choose to give hope and share joy. So thank you so much for your talk. And I do hope that we all choose to have the courage to build the world back better. So thank you.
Thank you, Dana.
I'd like to open, well, first of all, I'd like to welcome to the panel Gavin Morris, who is our Chief Philanthropy Officer. And I believe we also have Alicia Saki on the call now, and she is our Chief Operations Officer. And we just really wanted to open up the discussion to a Q&A. If anybody has any questions for Afdhel or any questions for our team, please type them in the chat and we would be happy to answer any of them.
Thank you, Dana. Afdhel, it does look like we do have a question from one of our attendees, and she's asking, how does a company choose its purpose? Should it be aligned to the business itself to make sense from a marketing perspective, or can it be left field?
Great question, Inga. Thank you very much. Yeah, so as much as possible, yes, you should think about your purpose, first of all, as an intersection point between what your company is well positioned to do and what the world needs. That intersection point is really where your purpose should lie. So yes, ideally it should be part of your business model, or have implications for your business model as well. One of my favorite examples is Microsoft. That company, when Satya Nadella took it over about 6 or 7 years ago, didn't have a clear purpose. And through his leadership, they found a way to make it focused on this idea of helping every person and every organization on the planet achieve more. Now, the interesting thing about where that manifested itself as a social purpose was that it focused on disability. There are over 1 billion people in the world who have disabilities. And the employees of Microsoft were really passionate about the idea of helping people who are visually disabled or are hearing disabled. And there was this enormous groundswell of passion for innovation for the company to do things like helping create live subtitling for PowerPoint. I don't know if you know this, but on PowerPoint, if you start talking, it will immediately transcribe your words into a live subtitle for people who are hearing impaired. There are dozens of features now baked into Microsoft products that help people with disabilities of all types. And so it is really something that came authentically from the passion of the people of Microsoft, but has great business implications as well. Because the thing about inclusivity is the more people who can access your product, the more money you can make. So absolutely, you should think about finding ways to tie it in line with the business model you're in, the category you're in, so that there is some connection and it's not just a random thing that somebody picked because it was their personal passion. And that's what we do at Conspiracy, by the way. We come in and help companies align their purpose to really make it hum with their business as well. So thank you, Inga, for a great question.
It was a great question. We have another one for you as well. The next question is, for those of us who are retired and mostly able to support purpose through philanthropy, should we also choose a sword? And how, when there are so many urgent needs right now?
Great question. Thank you, Carrie. Yeah, I think so. And, you know, when it comes to personal purpose, I'll tell you a really handy methodology that we often use. It's called GPS. And the analogy is in the name GPS. You know, when you're lost, what do you turn on in your car? You turn on your GPS, right? So when you're trying to figure out what your own personal sword should be, what your purpose, your focus should be, we ask you to think about the following 3 things. Number 1, what are your gifts? What are you really good at? If you asked your 5 closest friends, hey, what's my superpower? They should be able to tell you what that is. It could be empathy. It could be breaking down walls. It could be building bridges. But spending some time to figure out what you're really good at as a person is the first G. The P is, what are your passions? And by passions, we don't mean hobbies. We don't mean things that you like music or cooking or travel. We mean what you're passionate about as a citizen. What are the issues and causes that you say, what gets you mad? What breaks your heart? What makes you want to just get out of bed and do something in the morning about, which could be hunger, for example, and the great work that these guys are doing. Making sure you align your purpose with your passion is hugely important. And the third letter, S, is for service, because purpose is never about yourself. It's always about being of service to a community, to another person, to something different than yourself. And so we say you can find your purpose by finding ways to take your gifts, to put them in service of your passions and help a community of people as well. And to me, that's the surefire way of finding out what your sword is as well.
Thank you. Kind of on the flip side, how would you describe this as applying to nonprofit organizations? So if you're in a nonprofit, which we have a number of community partners on the call, kind of, do you have anything to share with them?
Yeah, I think, you know, the wonderful moment that we're in is that you have allies now. Nonprofits are the ones who've been on the front lines for centuries, dealing with the issues out there. And I think that's where you should think about forming alliances with companies around common purposes. They need you. You are the experts in the space. They don't have the credibility. And by partnering with them, as you guys have done here so tremendously, you can build bridges, you can build coalitions because together you are stronger. You each have something that the other person doesn't have, right? So really it's about going out there and now starting to look at companies, signaling what they're interested in, and finding ways for you to align with them in ways to find common purpose. I think that is really the message to nonprofits. There's an incredible opportunity out there. The statistic I always cite to just sum up the potential is, I think in the United States, we gave $400 billion in charity every year, but we spend $13 trillion buying stuff. If even 1% of that can be channeled into doing good, what a huge, huge, amazing influx of resources that could be.
Well, thank you. There's another question, Fiona, that I wanted to make sure to answer for the group as well. You were asking us at Feeding San Diego, what percentage of every donation goes to overhead? Is it possible to request that all donations goes directly to clients? So we're incredibly proud of our tremendous efficiencies and all of our partnerships, which really allow us to maximize every donor's dollar. So 94% of our total operating expenses go directly to program services. So, and we're in large part able to do that because of our numerous food donor locations and our focus on food rescue. So we have an incredibly efficient organization. And absolutely, as a donor, if you're interested in designating your gift to support a specific program or to help support additional food that we're providing to the community during this time, you're more than welcome to do that. If you want to go ahead and I can actually reach out to you after the call with more information if you're interested in talking to us a little bit more.
Any other questions?
Doesn't look like we have any other questions. I also want to thank you, Afdhel, for coming. I think, you know, what we've seen throughout this COVID-19 pandemic is the community coming together in an extraordinary way, and both corporations and organizations like Feeding San Diego working together to really find a solution. I find it deeply inspiring, and I know that many others are going to be coming forward and working in partnership with everyone in the community to get us through. So thank you for spending the time with us today.
Of course, thank you for having me, guys. I love what you do, and keep up the great work.
Thank you, Afdhel. We're so grateful for you to have been here today.
Thank you very much.
And thank you to everyone for tuning in. We have a schedule that we will post to our Unite Stakeholder Call page, but we will be moving to quarterly calls beginning in January, so the third Tuesday of every month. So January and then April and so on. So we look forward to seeing you back in the new year. And in the meantime, keep up the amazing work that all of you are doing. We so appreciate it and appreciate your partnership. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye.